and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional. I'm your host, Sandy Lowres, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast is proudly brought to you by WB40 Women Beyond 40, a platform, magazine and podcast for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. You can check us out at WB40.com. Today in the confessional, I am really excited to welcome back Kerri Sackville. Kerri is a columnist, a writer and a media personality. And she has been in the confessional before, fessing up. And today we're really thrilled to have her back again, talking about her brand new book, which you can see here if you're watching our video. It is The Life-Changing Magic of a Little Bit of Mess. And I absolutely love that. Kerri takes all the fuss out of, the way we stress about cleaning, etc. Now, what's really funny is recently we had another guest on the podcast who was talking about all things home organisation. I love that. I feel like in the confessional we've got a little bit of yin and yang. Please welcome back to the confessional our friend Kerri Sackville. Hello, Kerri, and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional. How are you?
I'm good. So good to be back.
I know. It's so nice to have you back. It's been a while.
It has. A lot's happened.
So much has happened. My goodness. Wow. I was going to say, you were one of our very first, I think. You were in our top 5, I think, first podcast guest, which was really lovely. So nice to have you back now.
I'm honoured.
I'm honoured. So, hey, a lot has happened between that podcast and this podcast because, of course, we've had a pandemic in the middle of it all.
Oh, yeah, just a minor detail there. Yeah, just a global catastrophic pandemic. It's no biggie.
It's so crazy. And the last time I had you sitting in the confessional, we were talking about your beautiful book on dating.
Wow, lots happened since then. Yeah.
So much has happened since then. So fill us in. What's been going on with you?
Oh, look, in my personal life, my son moved out at the beginning of the year. He was actually meant to move out just before Christmas and then he had COVID. So that was postponed. But now I'm down to me and my 2 daughters in the apartment, which is a big difference. Like to lose one is a lot. That was a big adjustment. And I wrote another book, which was very surprising. There it is. I didn't expect that to happen. And it all sort of happened quite quickly. I wrote that last year in lockdown, actually.
Wow. So
here it is.
I was mixing cocktails and you wrote a whole book. So
you know what? I have to say I spent 2020 doing nothing. I mean, really, 2020 was a really difficult. I mean, it was a difficult year for everyone, but it was a really difficult year for me personally. The media sort of crashed and burned for a while, and I lost a lot of my regular work as a columnist. I really struggled to work out what I was going to do, what I wanted to do. I struggled with motivation. So I was not one of those people baking sourdoughs and being inspirational. I had my 3 kids at home. My son had 2 years at uni and was then at home. My youngest, was still at school and she seemed to cope better, but my big girl had finished the HSC and then her first year of uni, she had 6 days and then nothing, then online literally for 2 years. So that was really difficult for her. It was really difficult for me as a mum. And so I honestly did almost nothing. So I'm not an inspirational person. But then last year it changed and I sort of had this, I guess, spurt of energy maybe after doing very little for a long time. And I started to get more media work again. And then I was sent this book. And, as a writer, one of the great perks of being a writer is that we are sent books regularly in the mail, which is lovely. And given that there's almost no other perks to being a writer, that's a really good thing because I get one thing out of it and I get free books. And this was a book on cleaning. And I was reading this book on cleaning in lockdown and thinking, really, life is so hard at the moment. We're in this global pandemic. We're struggling with fires and floods and war was to come. Life is really hard for most of us, and kids at home and online learning and great uncertainty. do I really need to be worried about cleaning my house to a pristine shine as well? Like, seriously, is this something else that I need to be aspiring to? Is it not enough that we're supposed to stay fit and we're supposed to be cooking lavish meals and we're worried about our faces and our hair, and now we have to have perfect homes as well? And so I thought, no, no one's got to the end of their life and thought, I wish I'd spent more time mopping the floors. So I decided to write an antidote to, all the aspirational pantries on Instagram and Marie Kondo and her decluttering and, all the cleaning bloggers and 5-hour cleaning videos and how to fold a fitted sheet. And so my book was born.
Well, I want to say, first of all, congratulations, because, as someone who writes articles but has never, written a full book, you have written quite a number of them. And this is quite extraordinary. I love it, by the way. I'm holding it up. I love it. And it made me laugh because I was one of those people during lockdown in 2020. I sort of went the opposite way. In 2020, I was like, wow, this is such a novelty. I'm stuck at home. What am I going to do now? Obviously I launched a magazine and the podcast kept going and all those things happened. But I was like,
that's quite a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. I admit that. But I was kind of in that mode of, I'd been running for so long. I didn't really know how to stop. And so I was one of those people, I think, that went, I'm going to clean out my wardrobe and I'm going to clean out my pantry and I'm going to do all these things because I just didn't know how to stop. And in 2021, I think I went the other way, where I kind of went, wow, I'm actually really enjoying not having to be switched on 24/7. I actually really quite enjoyed it and sort of took a step back. And for the first time in my life, I was like, wow, guess what? I stayed in my pajamas all day. Guess what?
Amazing.
Right? But all the things that I almost felt like we had to reprogram and had to learn again, learn maybe for the first time for some of us to not feel that pressure, as you say, to have everything so perfect all the time.
Yeah, and the main reason I wrote this book was to make people laugh. I mean, there's no question. That was the aim of it. I think that, as I said, life is really hard. Life is really challenging for most of us, I think. It's challenging for all of us some of the time. And I just thought the news cycle is so grim. Things are tough. I just wanted something that could take people away from it and have a good giggle, for the few hours it takes to read it. But the other thing is there was an underlying message to it, which I think is the theme that kind of links everything I've ever written, or the theme that I certainly that I try to live by, which is that we don't need to be perfect. And I've written other books. My first book was about marriage and motherhood, and you don't need to be a perfect parent. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. My next book was about anxiety. And then by the third book, I was divorced. So clearly it wasn't a perfect relationship, maybe a little too imperfect. But, it was about dating and the messiness of dating and kind of how to survive that. But this book, I've thought so much about the pressure on women, and it is mainly women. Yes, there are neat men, but really the burden of housework falls nearly always in the majority to women. And I've got, snuck in a little bit of a feminist message into my book as well about that. But I just thought, there's so much pressure on women to have perfect bodies and perfect faces and to be perfect parents and perfect daughters and perfect partners and to always look immaculate and to have perfect homes. And no one cares about your messy house. Really, no one has ever fallen in love with someone because they had a sparkling shower screen. No child has ever looked back and said, I'm so grateful for my mother. She always put hospital corners on my beds. Like, nobody has ever gone to a dinner party and said, I had a really great time because the walls were freshly cleaned. These are not the things that matter in life. What matters is what kind of person you are. I had a whole long list of what makes you a good person in the book, and there are some funny ones, and it's obviously satire, but pressing that button that says, I'll donate that extra $1, to charity when you make a purchase at ASOS or the Iconic or whatever, which I do quite a lot, I must say. Or liking your friend's Instagram post, even if it's really boring. But our houses do not reflect us as people. And in fact, I feel much more comfortable in houses that are a little bit messy because it means that they're focused on other things. I feel I'm not going to worry about spilling my tea or whatever. As long as they've got a chocolate biscuit for me, cup of tea, maybe a glass of wine, then I'm happy. I don't care whether their oven's just been freshly cleaned. And I know people think the same about me.
Yeah, I love that. And here's the thing, right? I don't know that anyone would know is your oven freshly cleaned or not, right? Unless they open
Yes,
and
exactly.
looked inside. I have one of those ovens that says it's self-cleaning, but it's not really. It doesn't.
Oh, it never does. And I have, ovens are a bit of a sore point for me, as you would know if you've read the book. I did have an oven that was not self-cleaning, and I very, very rarely cleaned it. And I decided one day, it's time. I'm going to clean my oven. I'm going to do it properly. And I actually Googled a YouTube video telling you how to actually dismantle your oven in order to clean it. And it looked really simple, as all these YouTube videos do. And I followed along the instructions, and I was so proud of myself because I took my entire oven apart, and it had two different panes of glass, and there was a lot of crap built up, between the two panes of glass. Took them out, polished them all up. Everything looked amazing. And then I put it back together according to the YouTube video, except there weren't actually instructions on how to put it back together. You just sort of had to follow the dismantling in reverse. So it was a bit tricky, but I managed to get it back together, except when I went to kind of close the door, I noticed there was just like a tiny, tiny, tiny piece that I hadn't put back. Like this big, miniature. Like what could it matter? It was nothing. It was like a little rubber thing. So I thought, oh, don't worry about it. Closed the oven up, turned it on, put my lamb cutlets in there. The whole oven exploded. Literally like shattered everywhere. So the moral of the story is don't clean your oven. It's too dangerous. I now have a self-cleaning one, and as you said, it doesn't actually self-clean, but it cleans it enough.
Yeah, it cleans it enough. I find that mine doesn't really clean the glass, but I can live with it.
Exactly. No one's looking at your oven glass.
No one's looking at your oven. And here's the thing, I honestly, I'm a big believer for women that we should really give ourselves a bit of a break. As you say, I think when the time comes when my oven really, really needs that good clean, I'll just pay someone else to do it.
Hell yeah. That's my plan from now on. I'm never doing that again.
Wow.
Ever. But it's true. And the whole, when I was reading these books, because I did quite a deep dive into the whole cleaning industry to do research for this book, and people, who really do keep pristine homes, and the whole aspirational pantries where everything's labelled and in mason jars, and the bookshelves in colour-coded order, and the decluttering constantly. Actually, your bookshelf is pretty good. Can I see all the blue?
Can I say, though, that's the only thing I'm a bit weird about it, and I've always had a colour-coded bookshelf. I don't know why.
It looks lovely.
Thanks.
It looks very nice. Mine is very haphazard. But the thing is, when we're spending a huge amount of time on our homes, and it's the same as spending a huge amount of time on our bodies or on our faces or on our hair, it's like, what are we not doing? Like, what could we be doing if we're not putting all this energy into that? What are the ways that women are not actually self-actualizing because we are conditioned to think that this is what's important for our lives? And I just think that there is so much societal pressure on women to be perfect, to maintain this kind of exterior of perfection. And it's just taking us away from the things that really matter. It's taking us away from our careers, our passions, our children, like spending actual quality time with our kids instead of madly cleaning up or chasing them to tidy their rooms. Our relationships, our friendships, our families, travel, relaxing, sitting on the couch, having a nap. I just want women to have permission to do all that and drop all this kind of need to just keep these standards high. For who? Like, who's it for? This is our lives. And I think we should just go easy on ourselves and be just, I'm not saying we should live in squalor or chaos or completely let everything go, but just tone it down a bit to give yourself more time for yourself and for the things you love to do and just the things that make you feel good. And if it's having a nap, if it's watching Netflix, if it's sitting on the couch and reading a book that's making you laugh, if it's having a cup of coffee with your friends, like those are the kind of things that are important, especially now when life is so challenging.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think that now that we've come out of 2 years of basically being cocooned, locked down, all of those things of stress and all of the things to I think for a lot of us made us think about, well, what is most important in my life? And,
yes.
For those who, my kids are older, but for those that were at home with much younger children, I imagine they were like, you know, on one hand, they really loved having that real quality time finally with their kids. And on the other hand, they were like, this is bloody hard work and I can't wait for them to get back to school or whatever. It's hard work, right? But I do think that we are living in this age of home organisation and, you know, the home edit and get organised and Marie Kondo and all of those things. And it looks so beautiful. But honestly, I think for me, like as I said, for 2020, I went, I'm going to clean up my pantry and clean up my wardrobe, and I ordered all these containers and things. It didn't matter what I bought. I'm telling you now, my pantry does not look like the home edit version of that. It's just never going to be that way, because, you know, I could make it look pretty for a day and then stuff gets shoved in and then I forget to put things in containers, right? And it is.
Yes. It's a whole entropy thing. You know, I wrote about it in the book. But cleaning is literally a fight against the laws of the universe, because the universe is moving inextricably towards chaos. That's how the universe works. And oh, look, I've got a bit of fluff. It's illustrating my point. There's mess everywhere in the air all around us. But, you know, like our homes are moving always towards chaos. That's the laws of entropy. And, you know, especially if you've got kids, I think if you're living by yourself, it's just, yes, you can keep your house pristine. If you're living with kids, if you're living with a partner, if you're living with pets, you know, literally you spend all this time cleaning up. It looks fantastic for about 5 minutes and then bam, it's messy again. And it just takes so much energy. And I just think you're tugging on the one end of the tug of war constantly. If you just let it drop, it's so much easier. Everybody's so much more relaxed. And as I keep saying, I want to stress, it's a little bit of mess. It's not kind of complete chaos and squalor and disorder, but it's a little bit of mess. And the energy it takes to keep the houses, you know, Instagram ready is, to me, in my mind, not worth it. I've got other things to do.
I love that. Do you think for a lot of women too, it really is about control? So it's about controlling the things we can control. So for people who are really focused on, my house has to be perfect, maybe do you think it's because there's other areas of their life that they feel they can't really control?
For sure. And I actually, you know, I wrote about it. There was a time years ago where I used to be a mad declutterer. Like I really got into that whole thing. This was before Marie Kondo. Like I was decluttering before Marie Kondo even knew what decluttering was. And it was always an anxiety thing. Like I realized it was when I was anxious, when I felt out of control, then I would kind of go to my cupboards and start sorting through and throwing things out. And the problem with that is that I ended up having a lot of decluttering regret because you look through and you think, I'm never going to wear that jacket again, like that purple tartan jacket. And I'm going to throw that out. And, you know, what do you know? Like 3 years later, tartan's back and you're thinking, God, I wish I'd kept that tartan jacket. Or like makeup purses. I think I never need that. And then, you know, your makeup purse falls apart or your daughter is going off to camp and wants a makeup purse. So, you know, decluttering regret is real, but it was very much like an anxiety response, trying to control when I felt really out of control in my life. And I find that the more in control I feel of the rest of my life, the less I need to control my surroundings. And there are people who, you know, operate really well with a super clean desk, and that's fine. Like if you feel more calm with a really tidy house and you don't mind the tidying, great. I love having a tidy house. Like there's nothing wrong with having a tidy house. I'm just not prepared to put in the effort every single day to keep it pristine. So I'd rather let my standards slip just a little bit and have more time to myself. But if it's something that you enjoy and you feel better, great, do it. But it's when it's to meet these kind of standards that we feel we're being judged by from other people that's a problem. And, you know, the most important message I think I was trying to drum through is that nobody else cares. Even if you have the occasional judgy in-law who comes, that's their issue. They're going to judge something else if it's not your home. You know, they'll judge your parenting skills, or they'll judge, you know, how you make your cake, or how you live your life, or your career. You're working too much. You're not working enough. You know, you're not with your kids enough. You're with them too much. Like there are people, judgy people will be judgy. But, you know, we need to kind of live according to our own values as opposed to other people's.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
But it's so true. Like I'm a huge fan of life hackers. And so I've had a number of guests on this podcast who basically said, like, you know, don't sweat the little things. You know, Susie O'Brien was another columnist who basically is, you know, she wrote a book on half-assed parenting and why you should all jump on board with that, right? I think there is this idea, as you say, this ridiculous ideal that women will never be able to aspire to whatever that ideal is. That's the reality.
100%, 100%. And men, I think there's a lot of pressures on men in different areas. I think a lot of men still feel great pressure to be the breadwinner and to be tough and to not show their emotion, but they don't have the same standards, kind of the external standards that we do. Men aren't judged on the state of their homes. Men don't care. And there's something I was thinking about when I was writing the book, is the whole idea that women kind of saying, my husband doesn't notice mess. Like I notice it, and my husband kind of doesn't notice it. And I was thinking, it's not quite true, because like there's nothing wrong with men's eyes and there's nothing kind of special about women's eyes. It's just that we're conditioned to care about these things. Now you look at a man with his sports car or even his non-sports car, his new car, and he will notice the tiniest scratch. He'll notice, a bit of crap on the floor of the car. I mean, my car's, a lot of women probably like me, where my car's full of stuff. It's like a mobile storage unit. I throw things in there that I don't know what to do with. But men will notice their cars, and it's not that men don't have the capacity to notice mess. They just don't care about it like we do. And we're always criticizing men for that, but maybe they've got the right idea. Maybe that just gives them more time and energy to do other things and to lie on the couch and watch the footy or whatever on the weekend instead of running around madly cleaning up. It's just different societal pressures.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and it's really interesting that we then as women, because we're so conditioned to be noticing it all, that we then put that on the shoulders of our children, because, like our kids will, everybody's kids I'm talking about when I say our, will no doubt step over clothes on their bedroom floor, and they step over stuff. They couldn't give a rat's about whether or not their bathroom's being scrubbed or not.
Yep. And one of the greatest lessons I learned was with my kids to close the bedroom doors. And I still marvel at so many parents spend so much time kind of trying to get their kids to clean their rooms and put their clothes away and tidy up. And I think the reason kids have bedrooms is because they've got a door in it. That can be their space. Let them do what they want. And we don't need to worry about it. Like, we don't need to think about it. Out of my 3 children, it's unfortunate that the only one who was neat has moved out. Like, my son was very neat. He keeps his new share house room very neat, but my daughters are both really, really messy. And if it's too messy for me, I close the door and leave them to it. It's their space. Let them have their things. If they want their things on the floor, that's fine. And, I'm looking around me now at the table, which this computer is sitting on, and my daughter likes crocheting, my big girl. So, there's crochet stuff here. Here's a little bee that she's starting to make.
That's cute.
There's scissors from her crafting. Here's my passport, which I realize has expired. I need to look at that. There's pens. There's a spare mouse. There's some shopping I haven't unpacked. I'll get to it. Like, it's okay. I'll get to it. But this is a house it's lived in, and it's okay for a house to look like it's lived in. And I think, when I had my first baby, I spent so much time trying to clean everything away at the end of each night to look like there wasn't a baby living in the house, and then to look like there wasn't a toddler. It's like, why? Why do we do that? It's okay to have a house that looks like there are kids in it, to look like there are pets in it, to look like it's lived in. It's not a showroom.
I agree. And I think there's a difference between a house and a home.
Yes.
And I think for me, home, I live in a home, so, it's not just a house. And, but you're right. As you're talking, I'm looking around my desk and I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got the things I get, like socks. They're new.
Oh, nice.
I know, they're cute though, aren't they?
They are cute. I like them.
Yeah, my little
wow, they're really sweet.
Joe Pybus from Alex Hill podcast actually sent me those. Love. But piles of books.
Joe, you can send me some too.
I
please,
will. How gorgeous are they?
Nice.
I know, but honestly,
what can I show you? I can't show you anything nearly as nice.
Look at this.
I've got quite a few pens.
Look at this. I end up with
miles
of stuff. Look, betadine.
Lots.
I don't know. What did I use that for? I don't know.
Who knows? I'm sure it was important. Probably life-saving. I've got a lot of lip balms. Does that count?
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of
many lip balms on the table.
Ew, I've got not many, but so many jars of hand cream. Weirdly, I don't.
Oh yeah. I could there's literally. I won't reach around, but there's literally a tube of hand cream right opposite me. Can't be moisturised enough, ladies.
That's right.
Keep moisturising.
It's so true. But look, I love in this book you have written a list of things that definitely do not need to be perfect, and I loved this. I love that you also said it's a non-exhaustive list, so everyone can add to it. Your body, your relationships, your parenting and your home. I just absolutely love that. But tell us about the foreword for this book, because that just made me laugh so much.
I'm glad you like that. So it's not necessarily true. It may be true. It's up to the reader to decide if it's true or not. But HarperCollins, who are the publishers of this book, wanted to put out an inspirational book on home management, and they actually approached an influencer in the home management space and asked her to write the book. And she has several children, wears white all the time, has this pristine white house. But unfortunately, her name sounded a lot like my name, and a junior editor at HarperCollins approached me instead. And by the time they realised the mistake, my book was written. So they weren't necessarily happy about that, and kind of tried to take legal action, but it didn't work out. And so now they're stuck with the life-changing magic of a little bit of mess. That's the story. May or may not be true.
May or may not be, but I hope it is. I read it, loved it, so I was like, I hope that's true.
And there are snarky little notes from the publisher all the way through the book.
It's so clever.
When they didn't like the things I was saying. So, yeah. You can figure it out.
It's so much fun. So what would be your, there's so many, by the way, too, there's some really great things, on the back of this book. I would very much recommend this book if I could find it under a load of washing on my couch, Wendy Harmer.
Yeah, good old Wendy. Yeah, not known for her pristine home either, yeah.
I love that. So normally, if you had a home organizer on this show, which, by the way, we do have one coming up on this show soon, but
it's good. Have a balance.
No, it's
have
great.
A balance.
It's good to have a balance. Normally they would get, what are your 5 tips to home organisation or whatever? So what are your 5 tips for calming the hell down and not stressing so much?
Yeah. I guess the first one is to remember that nobody cares about your mess. As I said, no one's ever going to love you because of your pristine home. So work out why you're doing it. The other thing is that remember that letting your standards slip just a bit is going to do a lot to help with family relations. Once you stop arguing with everybody about a sock on the floor or their untidy rooms, everybody's going to be so much happier. So that's a good one as well. A third one will be to try and remember what's actually important, the things that you really want to do, and the things that really do need to be perfect, because there are some things in life that do need to be perfect. Like my coffee in the morning needs to be perfect. That's something I have to get right. If my coffee isn't right, I'm off on the wrong foot for the whole day. But my home doesn't need to be perfect, and your home doesn't need to be perfect either. What are we up to? Is that number 3? Number 4, to calm down. An aspirational pantry where everything is organized is actually not how we're intended to find food. We're hunters and gatherers by nature. We're not supposed to go into a pantry and just see biscuits with a big biscuit label. That's against nature. You're compromising what it means to be truly human. So your pantry is supposed to be messy. You're supposed to rummage around a bit. You're supposed to look in the back, open a few things. And then when you finally land on the chocolate biscuits, it's going to be a moment of triumph, right? And you're going to feel really good about it. And then you've earned your biscuit. Okay. And the final thing I'll say is that if your home is a little bit messy, your friends are going to be so much more comfortable. They don't want to come to a house where they feel intimidated, where everything's perfect, where they're scared like me to eat something in case they spill it on the floor. They just want, they want to feel comfortable. They want to feel that you're not kind of lording it over them with your perfect home. And they just want you to look like you're really happy to see them when they come to the door. And when you're starting to excuse your mess and you're saying, oh, I'm so sorry, please excuse the laundry on the floor, or please excuse the dish in the sink, that's taking away from the joy of the actual interaction. So they just want you to greet them with, hello, I'm so thrilled to see you. Come and have a Tim Tam.
Yeah, I love that. Always the chocolate biscuits, we know.
Always the chocolate biscuits.
But I do think there is so much merit in all of this and everything that you've written. And I know that you've done it in a very humorous, brilliant way. But there's so much truth in this book as well about that. And we take ourselves far too seriously with all this stuff as well, I think.
We do. And, I really did write it initially for a bit of a giggle, but I've already been having people writing to me saying, thank you, you've actually changed my life. Like I was obsessed with keeping everything clean and tidy. And now I realize, what am I doing it for? Like, what's the point? And I'm spending more time doing things for myself. So that's really good. As I said, everything I do, everything I write is to try and help people to feel better about their lives by making fun of mine. And just to try and keep promoting that message that we women don't need to be perfect and that it's okay to be kind to ourselves and, to spend time looking after ourselves and to let our standards slip. And it doesn't actually matter what other people think. It's about, our lives. And I think, especially with the pandemic and everything that's gone on, I really do have a sense, and also because I'm getting older, a sense of life isn't that long. It's racing through. We've lost the last 2.5 years in a sense. And so I just want to enjoy it as much as possible. And I want to spend as much time as possible feeling those moments of pleasure and joy. And personally, I don't get those moments of pleasure and joy from spending time with my steam mop. If somebody else does, that's great, but that's not what brings me fulfillment.
Yes,
it's a good steam mop. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a great steam mop. But, there are other things that bring me greater joy.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate my vacuum cleaner, but I don't want to fall in love with it. You know what I'm saying? So,
oh, yeah, I do.
I have floorboards through my house, and I've just cottoned on to the fact that I bought this, I don't know, what do you call it? Kind of like a broom, I guess, but it's microfiber. It just picks up all the dog hair. So I just walk around with the broom. I go, that'll do.
Yeah. Well, I've got my handy Dyson, which, the cordless, which is great because it doesn't do the best job. It doesn't do the same job as, one with a cord, but it's easy. And I'd much rather just get out, go, ooh, and leave a bit on the floor, but the job's done. Good enough. It's good enough. That's my motto in my house. It's good enough. It's clean enough.
It's good enough. I love it. And so, going back to the pandemic for just one sec, because I know we've sort of emerged out of it, and out of emerging from that, you've written this fantastic, funny book, which did make me laugh, and everyone should rush out and get it, and we'll put all the links in the show notes so people can. But I wanted to chat with you a little bit about something you touched on before, which was that during the pandemic, being a creative and being a writer, how much that impacted your livelihood, your ability to source work.
It was really hard, yeah.
Yeah, crazy. And we launched this magazine in the middle of a pandemic, crazy. But the reason that we probably brought that launch date forward for this independent mag was because I knew so many people who basically had no work, like nothing.
Yeah.
And do you think that things are getting a little bit better now in the industry as a whole?
Yeah. My experience was, and from talking to a lot of other creatives as well, 2020 was really, really difficult. And I think what happened is my understanding is a lot of advertising dollars were lost. People couldn't afford to advertise, and so that impacted the media. Their budgets were slashed. And so those of us working in the media were really adversely affected. And that was really hard. It seemed to start to pick up again in 2021. And then this year is much better again. But it's always hard being a creative. And I think the key to being creative is flexibility. And, this book was not something that I had been planning. It was sort of an opportunity that I saw and I took. And I think that's also the case. And you did the same thing. You really have to stay flexible and kind of and think laterally and look around for different opportunities. And back in when I stopped, I had quite a break from writing in 2020, and I'd been writing a lot of serious pieces before that. And then when I came back into the media, I started writing a lot more comedic pieces because that's what it seemed like the call was for, the audience wanted, the editors wanted, and I think people needed a bit of levity. So I think it's just good to be flexible, to keep your eyes open. I was very prepared, when I thought that I wasn't getting a lot of work, I was prepared to go back to copywriting, which I used to do a lot of. And I'd always be prepared to go back to copywriting. I mean, this book came along, and then I've got another book in the works for which I feel really grateful. But, I would never be not prepared to kind of take whatever work is available to keep going because it's hard. I mean, So, and the thing about being a creative as well is it's not just what work opportunities are there. You're also depending on yourself to produce that material. And there are times when I just didn't feel up to it. I mean, 2020 was so difficult. I was struggling a lot with seeing my kids struggle. It was a really, really dark time. I had some health problems that year and I just wasn't feeling creative. But happily, I know enough about myself now to know that I will go through those times and then so far, always, eventually, that kind of urge to create again comes back. But it took a while. It took probably a good 8 or 9 months of writing very little. And then I had this idea and it was just bam, and it was done in about 5 months. But, for people who are creative, it doesn't, I've never believed you have to create every day. You have to write every day. You have to paint or do whatever every day. It's okay to listen to yourself and be intuitive and know that this is going to be quite an unproductive time for me, but trust that it will, come back eventually.
Yeah.
Again, a very long answer to a simple question.
No, but I don't know that it was a very simple question. I think that's a really interesting thing. Yeah. I think one of the other layered things in that is being female creators and then being female creators of a certain age. And by that, I mean, obviously over 40, 50, 60. It did, it has, I think at times for me felt like quite a hustle. Like you're always working and you're always striving to get stuff out there and for it to be acknowledged or for it to be accepted in the way that you hoped it would be is hard. So I think a lot of women that I've spoken to as well felt the weight of that on them over the course of the pandemic, and not just writers and artists and whatnot, but women in general. A lot of women, I think their work was impacted, their livelihoods were impacted during those times. And and
I think also our emotional labour was more. I mean, I'm a single mother, so, I was living here with my 3 kids, but I also know women who were married, and it seemed much easier often for the husbands to go and put themselves in the office and close the door, and the women were juggling the work and the childcare. And even if it's not the actual childcare, even if your child is happy in front of the screen, it's the emotional labour of making sure that your kids are okay and looking after them when they're not. And I think still, especially for people of our generation, it's still quite imbalanced. The majority of relationships of women in their 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s still seem to have that more traditional division of emotional labour as well as physical labour. And so it was really hard for women in the pandemic. Yes, it was hard for everybody, but I think women, particularly, and women with kids, it was really, really tough.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even, I spoke to a lot of friends whose kids were a bit older. So their kids could, they were a bit more independent. But women, I agree. And I have written a lot about emotional labour because I do think we do tend to carry it, whether we like it or not. And I've, as a single mother and all of those things myself, but I do feel like women, even when their kids were older or when they had partners at home, this emotional thing of taking care of the partner as well is huge, right? And they're not necessarily asking for that, but as you said, they're in their office, they close the door, and so women are like, oh, I'm working away here in my office as well, but I've still got to go and put on the washing and cook the dinner and, all the things. And as you say, if you've got kids, it's an added layer of that. It's such an extraordinary thing. I wonder if that we will return in a way, like women, I'm talking about women in general, whether we step out of this pandemic in a way where we can't not be fully changed forever. I think a lot of things were highlighted during that pandemic, and one of them was definitely this area of emotional labour or emotional load that just keeps popping up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, it was really a sense of, and I'm not sure everyone has this, but for me, it was really a sense of the importance of time and how time is limited. And we'd all been going about our lives, and then suddenly everything stops for 2 years. And it's still continuing now. Life is still not back to normal. We want it to be, but it's still, I just went and got a PCR test because I have a medical appointment on Friday, and I had COVID 6 weeks ago, and I'm still concerned because 2 of my kids have had it, but one of them hasn't. My elderly parents haven't had it yet. So there's all sorts of things that we're still kind of wrestling with. But this sense of time, and time is limited, and really looking at what's important to us. And I think a lot of us really reviewed our relationships in the last couple of years. and friendships and who we wanted to spend time with when we could eventually get out, who we wanted to spend time with on Zoom calls when we were doing Zoom. You know, it was a real chance. There was a lot of chance for reflection and working out what actually brought us joy and what didn't. I mean, one of the things, you know, I've long believed, and I talk about and write about, is that I don't believe that in happiness as a state of being. I don't believe people can aspire to be happy. I don't think human beings are ever permanently happy or permanently not. Life is a series of moments, right? And what we aspire to are moments of joy and pleasure in life, as opposed to trying to be happy all the time, because that's almost an impossibility. So I really had a sense of, when I was, you know, in lockdown and, you know, my kids were struggling, I was struggling, what is going to bring me joy? So I got into knitting in a big way, and then I sort of got into reading particular kinds of books. I started reading much lighter kind of books with you know, levity and comedy in it, because that's what brought me joy. You know, being careful about what Netflix shows I watch, being careful about who I spoke to and who I spent time with, and that for me has continued on. I'm very mindful about how to spend my time in a way that will maximize my joy and fulfillment and pleasure, and of course, you know, for that of my kids and the people I love. So that's what came out of it for me. And I don't think I'm going to lose that. I think that's something that I'll hang on to forever. And I think our kids will be affected by it forever, particularly the older kids. I think the little kids bounce back quicker, but the older kids who lost so much of their formative years, you know, for my daughter to be spending, you know, her first 2 years out of school at home at the kitchen table is just a really difficult experience. I feel really sorry for all the kids who were doing HSC, you know, in 2020 or 21, who first year uni 2020 or 21. It was really tough on them. And I think they're probably the ones who are going to be coming out with the longest term impacts.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I watched my daughter sort of graduate during that pandemic, graduate from university and sort of miss out on all of that as well, like all those that years of hard work to not be able to have a graduation ceremony. And you know, we took photos of her in her cap and gown at home, whatever. You know, it's a lot for a lot, but I did, you know, a lot of kids going through, as you say, year 11, year 12, during the pandemic. My heart broke for them to have missed out on all of those little milestone things that they get to do in the celebration of that.
And of course, anybody who, you know, who missed out on going to the funeral of a loved one, or the wedding of a loved one, or their own weddings, you know, or, you know, other rites of passage. It's just huge. I know so many people who missed out on seeing their parents before they passed away. You know, it's the impacts will be continue to felt for a long time, but I hope that we can take away from it the importance of focusing on the things that nurture us. Because we were all forced to do that in lockdown, to really dig deep. And if that was baking sourdough or rearranging your pantry, that's fantastic. You know, whatever works.
But it was actually okay too if you were just sitting on the couch watching Netflix and, you know.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, that's what I did for most of 2020 whilst I was knitting. Nothing I'm actually wearing, but you know, still it was fun knitting garments that will now sit in the top of my cupboard forever.
I love that though. My daughter took up knitting as well during the pandemic, so it's great. But I love that you share, you know, such humour and such honesty and such wisdom in your columns, but also in this beautiful book, The Life-Changing Magic of a Little Bit of Mess, which is out now, and I love it. I've got like little bookmarky things. I've kept the receipts in here that I was going to read, but then I kept chatting. But it is a beautiful book. This is really lovely. I hope everyone, and not just because it's yellow, I do love the yellow, by the way.
Yeah, I love that cover. It's a great cover. It's such a nice cover.
It's like sunshiny, you know. But
it is. It is.
A Bible of Domestic Imperfection. I love it. The Life-Changing Magic of a Little Bit of Mess. Well done, Kerri. I love it. Thank you for bringing some humour and joy to us, and for reminding us to just, you know, cut ourselves a little bit of slack and remember what we should be doing in life, which is, as you say, aspiring for those little moments of happiness and joy.
Yeah. So good talking to you.
So lovely talking to you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.